there is no need to buy a N55 powered BMW. Guys, I owned a BMW M235i, a 2015 BMW that was powered by the EWG N55. The N55, I think if you're watching this video, you will know about the motor. It's a straight six BMW engine used in BMW's higher level cars, and they even put it in the M2, right? Which was, albeit a more revised N55. Philosophically, there's no point of you buying an N55. I'll discuss the common issues and the issues I had as well with that motor. Give a final reason as to why you would buy an N55, even though I think you should. Very first thing, positive points. Guys, the BMW N55 sounds like nothing else. And if you go on the forums, if you talk to people, a lot of them just regurgitate that fact. Engine sound is not simply something that's good if it annoys your neighbors or if you've got the greatest burbles. That's not what engine sound's about. There's notes, there's harmonics, and the N55 does that so well. The frequency it hits, right? And let me tell you guys, with the N55, I literally stopped listening to the radio because it sounded so good at all rev ranges, guys. Idling along at 2,000-3,000 RPM, it felt like it was running on condensed milk, on butter and cream. Honestly, guys, it's not me exaggerating it, right? Especially with the M Performance exhausts. It's a beautiful motor, no doubt about it. Recognized by BMW and non-BMW fans alike. The other benefit is it's kind of classic BMW, isn't it? It's old guard, where transition into the modern era, it went turbo. Well, the N54 went turbo as well, but it kind of transitioned, but it retained a lot of the BMW six-cylinder attributes that we all enjoy, right? Everyone, regardless of whether they're a BMW fan or not, do know about the BMW straight sixes and the fact that they are good motors, and they are, guys, especially within warranty. So the N55 kind of straddled the line. Nice BMW feeling, smoothness, that nice linear acceleration. The B58, the newer BMW motors are very torquey, they're very boost reliant. The N55 felt very naturally aspirated. Line up against a B58 motor, you'll be neck and neck in a stock N55, but you'll feel slower when you're doing it. That's just the magic of N55, it's just that smooth of a motor. Third thing is, it is actually really fuel efficient, guys. I've got a Toyota GR Yaris, which I'm in right now, and believe you me, the N55 was actually more fuel efficient, especially when you were going around town or really pushing it. In both of those ways, the N55 is a more fuel efficient motor. It runs hotter, it's just the BMW way, and then obviously it impacts reliability and things of that nature. Philosophically though, there's no need to buy an N55, right? If you buy the PWG, which is the initial versions of the N55, those are actually unreliable motors. They do have a bunch of issues, which I'll get into as well. Age has made them even more unreliable. Father Time makes reliable engines into unreliable engines, and the N55 PWG wasn't the best of them to begin with, and now it's really old, guys. So I would say there's no reason, I can't think of any reason anyone should buy a N55 PWG. Then we get to the EWG, right, which stands for electronic wastegate, but BMW did make more changes than that. And the EWG motor, guys, is a bit different in the sense that it is actually a pretty nice motor, right? It is a bit more reliable. But with the EWG as well, I would say, why are you buying that motor when the B58 exists? And many EWG motors get close to price with the B58 engines. The B58 is so close in price now, especially if you're getting a M235i. You can easily go for a M240 with a bit higher mileage, and you'll get a car that's a year newer, more updated in terms of engines. Give it a few months save, and you know, if you get the EWG motor, you'll be spending right away. You might have the capital to get that now, but as soon as it's in your garage, guys, you will be paying the bills for that motor. So might as well just wait a little bit and save up for the B58. That's my philosophical view, honestly speaking. And I'll get to it in the end for, you know, why you should buy the N55 and why someone would make that decision. I think there is a case to be made for it, and you know, if you own the N55, there's no need to sell it because of this video or feel bad about it, which I'll discuss at the end as well. But for new buyers entering the market, I think the B58 really is the right call to make. If I said I'd talk about some common problems, I've had some of these happen to me. Most of them haven't occurred to me, right? Because my car was very low mileage. It was 60,000 kilometers only. Very first common problem is the valve cover gasket. We all know BMWs, guys, these things leak notoriously. And it's a combination, right? With BMW, it's a combination of them using poor quality gaskets and also the heat cycling of the motors. These engines run notoriously hot, crazy hot. With my N55, if I came back after a cruise or even just off the highway and I parked at home, guys, my garage in the winter would be heated up, boiling hot. And, you know, I almost found as if it was a hazard. Front fenders would be so heated, you could burn your hand, right? I always thought How did BMW get away with that? Quite dangerous from a safety perspective. So, these cars run hot and then they cool down, and that constant heating and cooling further degrades the gaskets, right? So your valve cover gasket, that's definitely a thing. Second thing is your oil filter housing gasket. That also happens at 100,000 kilometers. Both of these things, a lot of owners nurse them. They don't rectify it as soon as it happens. And that brings me to the next common thing, which is your serpentine belt, right? Now, my serpentine belt did indeed pop off at just 60,000 kilometers. I think the belt was okay. From memory, it was just the plastic pulleys. One of them decided to yeet itself and my belt popped off. Now, the reason I wanted to mention it in this order is a lot of people ignore their oil filter housing leak. And the issue with BMW's oil filter housing leaks is that it's directly on top of the serpentine belt, and the oil leak can start getting onto your belt. If your belt is drenched in oil over time, it gets weaker and it can tear off and shred, right? It's already a poor design without that happening anyways, because a belt is known to pop off. Mine did without an oil leak. The issue here is if it pops off, it can then be absorbed into your engine through the seal, through the crankshaft seal. Your engine will end itself, right? So that's sort of one of the reasons why your oil filter housing leak you really want to be on top of. N54s do it, N55 does. A lot of the N motors do use the same design, so they're all capable of doing it, though it seems to be more common in N54s, probably because they're a bit more neglected. Number 4 thing, guys, is oil pan gasket, which sits at the bottom of your engine. That can degrade over time. I think, from what I've seen, that happens after 150,000 kilometers. If you're doing that fix, you might as well do your rod bearings, right? That leads me on to the number 5 thing, right? Which is your rod bearing. They're a weak point of this engine, especially if it's tracked. It does high Gs. If you do your oil filter housing gasket change without priming the motor, generally speaking, the bearings aren't a strong suit of many BMW motors, something that's been rectified in the latest engines. And guys, there's a whole host of other things that may occur. Rear main seal, Valvetronic's an issue. Though rare, if it does occur, it's quite catastrophic because it can fry your DME. That whole job is quite expensive, thousands of dollars, upwards of $5,000. So happens either very early or very late, but if it happens, you are in trouble, right? Just like your rod bearing. The F-Series chassis itself has various electronic gremlins anyways that you have to deal with on top of that. So that leads me into the next point as to why you would actually buy a BMW N55. Guys, this video is not to trash on the engine. I would actually say this motor is an enthusiast's buy. N55 motor does have a very unique character. Revs like a naturally aspirated motor. I've driven many B58s as well, and they definitely have a more boosted feel to them. The N55 has a very linear feel. As I said, I stopped listening to the radio, and and soon after my radio actually did go out because it's a BMW and you'll have electronic gremlins. But that's besides the point. The N55 is a really good sounding motor. If you're an enthusiast and you're getting a BMW, there is an argument to be made where you can say, I want to have that feeling, that BMW feeling and that sound, right? A big part of it is those intangibles. That's why we buy these cars, and a BMW at the best of times is not a great rational decision, right? So I would say there's a case that can be made by many where they might say we like the sound and we like the characteristics of the N55, and it does produce excellent power anyways. You could then go ahead and buy that motor, and you have to be a diehard N55 fan, right? And I would say I am probably one of the most diehard fans. If I was ever to get into a BMW and I was in a mindset where I want to take my cash and throw it in the garbage, best believe I would probably get an N55 powered BMW and probably the M2 motor, because a lot of the problems I spoke on, especially the rod bearing issue, at least is resolved in the M2 motor. Valvetronic and those other leaks can still occur, but at least you've got an M2. Thanks for watching. Have a good day.